Florida, Mr. Deutch, and a member opposed. Each will control 5 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, nearly 2 years ago, an explosion on the BP Deepwater Horizon drilling vessel unleashed a steady gush of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico that went unstopped for 3 full months. The 4.9 million barrels of crude oil spewed into the Gulf and jeopardized an ecosystem home to over 15,000 species and claimed the mantle as the worst environmental disaster in our nation's history. Yet the BP Deepwater Horizon spill was also an economic disaster. And, Mr. Chairman, that is the issue addressed in the amendment I present to this body today. My amendment simply provides that no one shall be eligible for a lease issued unless there is first an estimate of the economic impact, including job losses, resulting from a worst-case discharge of oil from facilities operated under that lease. Right now, under current law and under this legislation as drafted, companies applying for new oil drilling leases are not required to project the toll on local economies resulting from a worst-case spill. In my home state of Florida, and in other Gulf Coast states like Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, the economic consequences were enormous. Forced closures of fishing areas led to shuttered businesses. Fewer tourists led to job losses. The powerful economic ripple effect was felt by millions of Americans in states whose coastal towns, cities, and businesses depend on the livelihood of tourism, fishing, restaurant, shrimping, and other industries. The bill before us today would open large areas of the Gulf of Mexico, the east and west coast of the United States, and areas in Alaska to oil drilling. Opening these areas to drilling exposes the coastal communities and coastal states to significant economic impact and job losses should a large-scale oil spill like the one in the BP Deepwater Horizon occur. And while BP created a $20 billion recovery fund to assist communities devastated by the spill, litigation over the total cost continues today, as BP seeks financial contributions from Deepwater Horizon contractors for payout of claims. Estimates of the spill's total economic impact are upwards of $40 billion and more. The federal government has a real interest in ensuring that companies applying for new oil drilling leases are aware of and are prepared for the potential economic impact and job losses resulting from a worst-case scenario spill. It only makes sense that these applications require an economic in addition to an environmental estimate of such disasters. My amendment, therefore, would require the person to include in their application this estimate of economic impact arising from a worst-case discharge of oil from the facilities. I urge my colleagues to join me in safeguarding our economy from tragedies like the Deepwater Horizon spill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Washington seeks recognition.
Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, since the Deepwater Horizon tragedy, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management and the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement have put forward significant regulatory measures governing offshore drilling. This is very important, Mr. Chairman, because existing federal regulations, specifically 30 CFR 254.26, already require a worst-case discharge scenario. So that's in the law already, Mr. Chairman. In all lease applications, that includes the evaluation of economic resources that may be impacted. So I find it interesting that we have an amendment before us and that we are debating on essentially legislation and regulatory issues that are already currently in place. Now let me make another point to hopefully sometimes point out the disconnect of what we're talking about, because one of the issues that we are talking about here are the creation of American energy, American jobs, American security, less dependence on foreign sources of our energy. This last January, for example, the State Department expelled the Consul General of Venezuela in Miami for plotting a cyber attack on the U.S. government. And yet, here we are debating an issue that could affect are getting to be less dependent on foreign energy sources and ignoring what is the obvious. We ought to be obviously trying to be less dependent on foreign oil. And yet that debate hasn't been going on. We're talking about a debate on an amendment that is simply redundant of current law. I don't know why we're having this debate, but I think the redundance of it here, we always have a worst case discharge scenario in current law. We simply don't need this. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge opposition to this amendment, and I'll reserve my time in case I have to say something further.
The gentleman from Washington reserves. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentleman from Florida has 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the gentleman from Washington I respect a great deal, but to say that this is redundant of current law is just incorrect. The gentleman knows and in fact told us that the requirement that he referred to is in regulations. Mr. Chairman, for anyone who's watched what's gone on in this body, in this Congress, it has been this House of Representatives that has brought to the floor bill after bill after bill to give this Congress the ability to repeal regulations, to block regulations. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to have to rely on what's in regulations if we believe in American jobs. And the suggestion that somehow the American jobs in the energy industry are more important than the American jobs in the tourism industry and the shrimpers and the people in tourism and who realize every day the opportunity to provide for their families because of the beautiful, pristine coastline that we have in Florida and because of all that surrounds the environment in the other states in the Gulf, to suggest that those are somehow less important than energy jobs is inappropriate. But more than that, I don't want to have to rely on regulations, Mr. Chairman, if we are committed to ensuring that there is an analysis of what would, in the worst case, then let's put it in the law. Let's put it in this statute. Let's not rely on the regulations that my friends so often blame on these bureaucrats for writing. Let's not rely on them. Here's an opportunity for us to stand together and not want to rely on regulations. Mr. Chairman, I ask my colleagues to join with me to, as they already have acknowledged that this is an important issue, to not have to rely on regulations